Let's go. Ian McDermott interview. I've actually been really looking forward to this. I cannot wait to hear his thoughts post the rise of Skywalker.
Please welcome to the
It's just
stage
so I'm really excited for
Emperor
this interview.
Palpatine himself, Ian
I'm a,
McDermott.
I'm a, I'm gonna turn it up. I'm gonna turn it up a bit.
Go, 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 go. Good afternoon, everybody.
He's getting
I'm
warmed
sorry
up.
about this. I'm cutting back on electricity.
Well, you know what? It's good to conserve. It's
Good to
best
see
to
you.
keep that energy. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
It's a delight to have you here. And you know, I think the last time you were at a Star Wars celebration was about 10 years ago.
Think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you find,
Roll it
enjoyable and
again.
meaningful about coming back to these celebrations and interacting with fans?
Well, it's these guys. They're sort of. You are. You are the point of it all. And it's great for me because, as you know, I do a bit of theater work, and Star Wars is terrific. But I really like being in front of an audience because it's a two-way process, and anything can go wrong, and a few things could go right, and maybe now and again, as you've just proved, you can laugh.
And that's it. Like we all
Ian
laugh.
McDermott
We
was
all
in a
need more
production of
joy.
Macbeth,
I
and
want to
his
go
whole
back in
scene
time
is
a little.
is really good. He plays the
And I've
porter.
heard a story when you were younger that you saw a show in Dundee, Scotland, and you described how the experience really captivated you, and you could still kind of see the faces of the performers years on. And I want to hear that story again and learn a little about what made it so captivating for you.
Just to start, yes, acting about, yeah. Well, when I was a kid at school, I'd be about 10 years old now, I think. And the class were going to perform a sort of mime, a kind of dance thing in front of the choir. And the choir was singing Waltzing Matilda, the great Australian national song. And Waltzing Matilda is about this tramp, character part straight away. And the teacher said, all of those who would like to audition for the part, put their hands up. And to my great surprise, shy boy that I was, this hand went straight up in the air. And so they said, well, wait your turn. There's another 10 people in front of you. And I watched those 10 people. And I had real self-confidence to think I could maybe do it a little better than them. And I didn't know why I thought that. And I went out anyway. I did it.
He
I
is.
got the part.
I got to
I
meet him a
realized there
few
was
years ago
something
with
inside
Spencer
me
and Alexis.
that needed
He's
to
a
do
really
it. So when
sweet
people
guy. He's
say,
really funny.
why did you
He's a
become
really
an
nice
actor?
dude.
How did that happen? The answer is, I don't know really, because it sort of happened to me. Anyway, went on and did that show about this tramp who at one point had to dive into a water hole, billabong is the Australian term for it. And I dived into this rubber dinghy. I mean, not very far, I just crouched down. And the last lines of the song are something, "You'll never take me alive," said he, putting his hand up in the air. And that occasioned my first review from a young girl, same age as mine, who I was rather attracted to, I have to admit, even at that young age. And she said, "Ian, enjoyed the show, but you've just demonstrated what it's like to have constipation."
Ooh,
So as far as reviews are
man,
concerned, it's been downhill ever since.
fuck them
Not
kids.
really.
Well, you know what? Someone's got to
What?
someone's got to display that and show it that.
Yeah.
Well, I also
I'm sure he
have
did
heard
it
you
while
say since childhood
chewing the
that
scenery like he
you've
does
always
his
been interested in playing
Palpatine.
villains, that you think they're the most interesting characters,
Yeah.
which I think that worked out pretty well for you.
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, in carrying on my young career, when our gang, around the corner, we used to play games. Robin Hood was a popular one, and I always wanted to play the baddie. And they said, "Well, it's the Sheriff of Nottingham," but I'd done my research, and I said, "No, it's King John. He's even worse." So even in those days, I was after the worst person in the world.
He wants to
I
be
didn't
the
know,
big
of course,
bad.
that
I
was
love
going to be
that.
the worst person
I
in the
love,
universe.
yeah. That's
I
the
mean,
go-to.
to think I'm worse than Darth Vader, that's
Yeah.
something, you know. Yeah.
Snaps for the Emperor. Snaps for
Well,
And
the
you know,
Emperor.
and we are here to celebrate Star Wars. If you've heard that, so let's jump a little to some Star Wars talk.
okay.
Let's go back to Return of the Jedi, which was shooting principal photography 40 years ago in 1982.
I know.
Or did you see this as an unexpected challenge? Like, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to join this.
Well, I mean, George cast me because I could, at 37, believe it or not, I guess, you know, be convincing as a very old person. And the casting
Wow.
director, the great Mary Selby, had seen me in a play playing the aged Howard Hughes. Well, a creation of Howard Hughes. He was called Henry Hackamore in the great Sam Shepard's play Seduced. And it was in a studio theatre, much smaller than this.
I
And so
love
I
the
guess she
way the
said to
British
George, this
theater people
guy,
speak.
he's
That
relatively
cadence
young,
of the
37,
great
who's
play.
probably going to be convincing as this old person, you know, 120. So that's why I got the interview. And George took Mary's word for it. So that's why I got the part. So it was a very unusual and sort of stimulating occasion. And then I still think this actually. I mean, I woke up then one morning and thought,
Pardon me.
my God, I'm in Star Wars. And I still do that on a regular basis, actually. And now I'm in all of those films, not as many as Anthony Daniels. Where is he? Where is he? I can't believe he's not shouting that out. He must be here somewhere. Um, but I've, you know, it's happened 3 times. There was the first meeting with George, and then for prequels, the second meeting with George, and then for the third time, a phone conversation and a subsequent meeting with J.J. Abrams. So you know the phrase "third time lucky." Well, I always think I've been lucky 3 times.
I've never heard
I
third
think
time
we're the lucky
lucky.
ones
but-
there as well. I gotta say. Well, and you know, you mentioned you've worked across the 3 trilogies now, and I'm curious, you work with a young Mark Hamill, and then Hayden Christensen, and then Daisy Ridley. How has it been, interacting with these new generations, and have you learned anything from them?
Yes, it's it's odd. I can tell you my age. You've looked it up anyway, so it's no secret. I'm 78, but as I go on, you know, from then, the sequence you've just outlined, I always find you can learn so much from people younger than you. And also, in a sense, they keep you young, which isn't too helpful. If
Oh
you're playing an
wow,
old
that
man,
is
but you
such
know
a
what I
cool
mean.
picture.
And that kind of energy has always really stimulated me. And I was talking to some friends the other day. Even when I was much younger, I always seemed to be the oldest person in the room. You know, I'd look. I was usually playing older parts, older my age, and I'd look around, and everyone was a bit younger than me. So I've always grown up not so much with my peers, but with people younger than me, and it hasn't done me any harm at all.
I just think you're an old soul, is what that's about. And
Is
not
it? Okay.
Yes. That's what I choose to think about when I think about how Return of the Jedi was 40 years ago.
Well,
And I was
that's
like,
very
oh,
interesting. Yeah.
that's been some time. So talking about the Emperor, Star Wars really has some elements of being a silent movie, and so much of what the Emperor does is with facial expressions and these kind of grand gestures. What is it like? What was it like finding that character through these subtle but really powerful ways?
Yeah, I suppose I had a big advantage in that makeup, you know. And when I was offered the part, I didn't know what it was, and then my agent leafed through his files, you know, desultory, and said, "Oh, he's called the Emperor of the Universe." I thought, "Oh, yeah, well, that's we'll be doing it then." And that had a sort of strange, stunning effect on me. And I think probably when I first got into the room with a mirror, and Nick Dudman, the great makeup artist who went on to do the Harry Potter series and all sorts of things, and he slowly put this stuff on my face. And latex, as it was then.
These behind the scenes images are really cool. I don't know if this one's new, but I've never seen that image of him with Daisy Ridley on the throne of Exegol.
By bit, he created this face, and I thought, oh my God, that's what he looks like, is it? I knew he was going to be old, but I didn't know he was going to be completely hideous and look like the worst reptile you'd ever seen in your life. But then I thought, that's great, and I'll have to find a voice that goes with it. And also the voice had been, suggested in The Empire Strikes Back by Clive Revel, wonderful actor. But he'd nothing to work with, really. I mean, he saw the person who was playing the part, presumably, when he was doing the recording. And he just sounded a bit like Clive, more sinister than usual. And I thought, well, if Clive had seen the kind of face he would have ended up in had he been playing the part, he would have changed his voice. But the inspiration for me came, well, I've mentioned reptile and toad and so on. So the sort of, that kind of, sort of, not to be too vulgar. Have you had your lunch about it? But sort of on the vomit, just, that kind of thing.
Can we just have a supercut of him making emperor noises?
I saw a Japanese actor in a Greek play playing in Japanese the character of Medea, as a man playing a woman extraordinarily brilliantly. And he seemed to get his voice for this woman who is, very understandably in a very bad way, from the depths of his stomach. I mean, most resonance in the theater, I can't do it now because this microphone distorts everything, but I mean, it's a good microphone. Yes, no disrespect to the sound engineers. No, 10 out of 10, you're fantastic. He'd cut me off if I didn't say that. No, but most resonance in the theater comes from the chest. And I have a big chest for my size. It's just luck. And that's why I've got the voice that I do. And I thought, well, maybe rather than it coming from the chest, I could do what that brilliant Japanese actor did and try and get it lower and try and see if it could come from the stomach. And so I did that, and I was doing it in the filming of Return of the Jedi, and nobody said stop, so I could continue to do it.
I love hearing him tell this story.
Richard Marquand, the director, said at one point, "Yeah, great, Ian. Hello, how are you? Good morning. Now, this voice of yours," I thought, here we go. He said, "I'm going to give you a tape of Clive Revel, and if you can keep your voice or get your voice to as close as Clive's as possible. George might let you keep it." I thought, he's going to take away my voice? Anyway, that was all academic because when we went and recorded the whole film, because in these days you had to dub practically everything because of the sound technique wasn't as brilliant as it is today. He and Steven Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy happened to be present, and they seemed to think it was okay, and the rest is your history.
I love that story. I love hearing him talk about how he got
what
to the
I've always
Emperor
wanted
voice.
to know is if Palpatine had a special tea that he used too, because that just seems like after having a day of giving orders with that tone of voice, he would just need a nice cup of lemon tea to soothe the vocal.
Yeah, I suppose after a while it does catch, but then the only time, maybe you're alluding to this, the only time it was a problem was when we were doing Revenge of the Sith out in Australia. Which was great. And the day that we were due to film the big scene in the opera, which later became the opera, Hayden and me, I'd been through a little bit of the turning into the monster, so I'd had the old makeup on, and then the makeup came off so I could be the Chancellor again. And also, when we were doing the scene, which you will remember, with Sam Jackson and Hayden, they were driving, and I mean driving, 4 wind machines towards me. It's not just a couple of fans, in front of you that blow your hair. No, these things used to come towards me so that the force, the excessive force of wind could seem exactly what it was, and I had to make sure that my false bit of hair and so on didn't come off. But that was all fine. But the only thing is, even though studios are kept very, very clean these days, even cleaner than before, that dust gets everywhere, and most of it seemed to go down my throat that day. So when we came to do that scene, and it was the end of the day on a Friday afternoon, and George says, "Well, just do it." And yes, do it. He didn't. He didn't.
He did the thing, guys.
He didn't say it like that.
Celebration is over.
Ian, we're gonna do it, okay? So we did it, and I said, "But listen to my voice. It's a bit sort of, neither one thing nor the other." And he went, "That's okay. It'll seem as if he's in transition." And it's always, if I've seen the scene, I haven't seen it for a while, but anytime someone shows it to me I look at it, I always know what is in my throat. And, and I think it's not quite right. Can we go again? But I'm comforted by the fact that he's in transition.
We know, speaking of the prequels and Revenge of the Sith, you had this amazing lightsaber duel with Samuel L. Jackson as
That's
Mace
a word
Windu.
for
And
it.
I wanted to talk, yes, please, round of applause for that, because
it's a cool fight. It's not the best, but I like the fight and
I wanted
concept
to
a
hear
lot.
about, that's a bit of swordplay and kind of what it was like preparing for that scene and
preparing the swordplay. Yes, you're leading him into dangerous areas here. I was surrounded by master swordsmen on that set. Never mind the people who were teaching us, Nick and his team, but two brilliant actors who are also brilliant swordsmen. And you're about to see them in action once again. And of course, I mean Ewan and Hayden, Obi-Wan, and of course, Anakin Skywalker, now Darth Vader. So I see, and there's some sabers being waved around. I don't see a red one. Oh, up there. Yes, very good.
Good job, everyone. Good job.
Yes, very good. I'm so sorry. I now feel the full Sith presence. I can relax. But they were,
He's so fun.
I had
He's
to go
so
in and
fun.
learn how to fight. And they'd done a bit of drama school, but not much. And I was amazed. And I said, but surely the power of the Emperor comes from his fingers. And George said, yeah, but he can wield a saber too. So I trained to wield a saber. And I can tell you, thank God I had one of the best stunt doubles in the business. But of course, I had to do a certain amount of it for close-ups and mid-shots and so on. So I did. And during one of those, I actually hit the great Sam Jackson. I know. He was very understanding. It was. But then, of course, when I think we all knew the script by then. But then he said, well, I wouldn't do his voice. That would be too patronizing. And anyway, I can't do it. He said, well, I don't mind a light tap, but what you did to me in the end was unforgivable.
I mean,
I'm sure
fair.
there was a motherfucker
it is.
peppered in there.
No swordsman me, but I'm so glad the boys, the young gentlemen, the middle-aged men, are back doing what they do brilliantly, which is perform those characters. And also, I believe there's a bit of sword fight. I think we have to wait a little while to find out. But I said to them after I watched it, because I was there when they were doing it quite a lot of the time. And of course, when we film, as you know, we tend to go right through it and not pick up it in little bits because it doesn't fit together very well. And of course, in the movie, it's the opposite. You see it in little bits because that's the way the story is told. So you could sense they were pretty good, but you didn't see how actually brilliant they were. But maybe you'll get a chance to see that this time.
Yes. Yeah, you've worked with so many talented
I'm
actors.
curious.
You
there's
and
all those
Hayden,
rumors
and
about
also
him being
Attack of
in
the Clones, which
Obi-Wan
is the
Kenobi.
20th anniversary.
Kind of hinting at it.
We're coming up on, which is wild. And but you worked with Christopher Lee, and of course, what an amazing talent and actor. And he played your apprentice. Yeah, please, a round of applause.
Yeah.
Snaps for Sir Christopher Lee.
Had you, before you worked on Attack of the Clones, were you acquainted with Mr. Lee, or?
No, we met on that set. I knew him vaguely through a relation of his, Harriet Walter, now Dame Harriet Walter, but we'd never actually met. And we got on straight away. I was a bit in awe of him because he was one of my film heroes. His Dracula will never be surpassed. If you want lessons in evil, look at the films of Christopher Lee. And of course, he had this most amazing deep voice, almost as low as James Earl Jones. And he told me that he really wished he'd become an opera singer. So he certainly had the equipment to, and he'd been a wonderful bass baritone. Great figures he could have created on the stage. But that was not to be. But I used to hear him. He had the dressing room next to me, and I used to hear him warming up in the morning, singing arias from Boris Godunov and so on. It was a sort of thrilling sound, and it made you slightly quake at the same time.
That's so cool.
But
That's
it was a
really
great
cool.
privilege to work with Christopher.
Metal
That's lovely.
frontman.
And I'm gonna
Christopher
jump
Lee.
back in time again. It's on my mind because we just had John Williams here
Yes.
giving us a special.
Yes.
Eli's popping back
Celebrated
in the comments.
His 90th birthday yesterday.
Yeah.
And I've heard that you had the opportunity to watch him conduct for Return of the Jedi.
That's right.
And I wanted to hear a little about that experience. And I think you said, you watched the images and as you could hear the music in your head, because John Williams is, of course, a master.
Absolutely so.
John Williams,
I was lucky
the
enough
GOAT.
to get along to the recording of the soundtrack at Abbey Road, where you probably remember the Beatles recorded. And he was there with the great London Symphony Orchestra and the London Symphony Orchestra Chorus. And the screen was above him. He knew exactly what each tiny bit was going to do, and he did it. And I just watched the relationship between John and the orchestra grow and grow. I mean, they'd worked together before in the two previous movies, and maybe other ones for all I know. And the relationship between the conductor and the orchestra is always vital. And it's not easy always to see. I mean, there are some conductors who are very showy and do lots of sort of handwork and so on. John doesn't do that, but he communicates nonetheless in a way that I think he communicates as a person. So you have this great rapport between all of those musicians, all of those singers, and this man. And referring to something you said earlier, when I was watching it, I said, God, this is like, watching a silent movie. And George says, it is a silent movie. And I knew what he meant, really. And then he said, well, it's maybe I won't do the voice again, it's too boring. Maybe it's more of a space opera. And I thought, well, that's a pretty good definition too. And when they recorded each section, the leaders of each section of the orchestra would then come into the booth and listen to it, on phones, or maybe not on phones, but listen to it anyway. And they were so critical of themselves. They would go, oh my God, did you hear that? And George said, I thought I was perfect. No, we got to do it again. We got to do it again. So you're just surrounded by all of these people who seem to me to be perfectionists already, trying to make it even more perfect. So it was artistically electrifying, and also to be in the presence of one of the great contemporary composers of our time.
Yes. That's incredible. And, also, I want to have another, I love Return of the Jedi. It's one of my favorites. And Richard Marquand, of course, you mentioned him earlier, directed that film. And, he passed not long after the film came out. So I feel like he doesn't come up as often when we're talking about Star Wars films.
Sure.
So I wanted to ask you what your standout memories of working with Richard were, and what his directing style was like.
Well, Richard was very straightforward, and it wasn't entirely easy for him because the storyboard was there. George had created it. I mean, I'm sure he made some suggestions and alterations were made and so on. But by and large, I think George had asked him to direct the film to communicate directly with the actors, which George didn't feel he was that good at. I haven't found that, by the way. I found maybe it's just us. He communicated perfectly with me. But George's view was always, he would spend some time casting, and once he thought he got the casting right, it was really up to the actor. And that's great, many contexts. But sometimes you want a little more help. You want to have a little chat, but you don't want to waste time because it's a big movie and you've got to move on. And Richard, was very good at that. He was an experienced film director and worked in the theater and so on. So apart from telling me I might be able to keep my voice, I had a very good time with him. And it was very odd on that first day because I'd got the makeup, I'd seen the face. It eventually gave me some of the script, so I'd learned the lines. But I didn't know what I was walking into. And when I came down that ramp on that first day, that was the first time I'd seen it. I mean, we did one rehearsal, and then we shot. So as the smoke cleared, I saw Darth Vader. I saw this guy I used to work with a lot called Michael Pennington on his knees in front of me. I thought, my God. And then I saw what must have been more than 1,000 stormtroopers, and they were all real. They weren't digitally created or they weren't painted on. And the most extraordinary thing was, between takes, there were these jeeps that ran up and down these serried ranks of stormtroopers, saying, "Take those glasses off, stand up straight, give me that camera," all of that. And then we'd go, "Ian, you ready to go again?" "Oh yes, okay, fine." So it's, but filmmaking is a bit like that. You're surrounded by expertise, which is, if you can take advantage of it, is the best thing in the world, because you're entirely supported. All you have to do is, allow yourself to be photographed, and not, as in the theatre, project emotion, but allow the right emotion and the right intention to be there, because everybody else will make it work for you. And on that first day, it also seemed to me, side by side, by all that concentration and hard work, there's a marvelous sense of absurdity about it all. You just think this cannot be. This is just mad. Or to use, I know it's a favorite American term, but I wasn't that familiar with it until JJ used to say it after the odd take. "Oh my God, it's insane!" And I said, "Is that good?" "Good, it's insane." So,
there's JJ for
and
everybody.
It is. We have a special treat today in that we're going to take some audience questions.
Yes, please.
So I see the microphone stands there. We got spotlight. Oh, right here we have a spotlight. So if you want to, right here as well, calmly line up to ask questions of Mr. McDiarmid while you get in place.
Here's somebody.
I'm going to.
What's really funny about this is that every celebration.
You came back for the Rise of Skywalker.
They do the Ian McDiarmid panel, and every year it feels the same. But it's always great.
I want to hear about what lessons from playing Palpatine in the previous trilogies that you brought with you to the Rise of Skywalker.
Yes. Well, it was nice to know that I wasn't dead.
Well, we can get into technicalities there.
Bringing him back. He was dead. Oh, did you see that fall? How could anyone survive that? Excuse me. He is the emperor of the universe. And, anyway, I mean, nobody's going to tell me he wouldn't have had a plan B, should someone, unlikely, he thought, manage to semi-destroy him. And, of course, he had the best operational ward team of surgeons. They were very small, but that didn't matter. They were very thorough. Maybe you remember from the film.
Very small group of people, folks.
He had the best that money could buy, or that enforcement could produce. And he also had that marvelous galactic wheelchair, which was a huge advantage.
Wheelchair.
So, and bringing him back from the dead, literally, originally I looked even worse than I looked in the final film. I had a bad arm and even more stuff, tubes were coming out of my head and so on. And eventually they thought that's a little bit too much, And I think, things have moved on a bit from, the regular hospital series, we say. So there are more sophisticated, things happening inside his body, but we won't go into that. But what they
go into that. Hold on.
And then they took my eyes away. I didn't know about that, but because my eyes were my eyes, and then they were de-digitized. So I lost them, but I was very pleased with the end result. It was fantastic. And I don't think they were trying to keep it a secret, but there were just so many things going on. But every now and again, JJ would say, "Be careful you don't blink." Now, we actors never blink, not in close-ups and so on, because it's a bad thing. And I thought, why is he saying that? He knows I don't blink. And then later, when I saw the movie, I realized why. But also, then when the eyes came back after what did he do? Suck the juice out of these two people to get his imperial status and self back. I had the biggest, best yellow eyes that were ever devised for a movie, and I was pleased by that, because I happily borrowed that phrase that people used to say about Frank Sinatra and his blue eyes. And when people would say, "I hear you're in the next film," and I would say, "Yeah, old yellow eyes is back."
Old Yellow Eyes.
So I should shut up.
I have a new favorite nickname for the Emperor.
Well, we're so glad that Mr. Yellow Eyes, Old Yellow Eyes, returned. And let's start here at Mr. Bail Organa. It looks like your costume, yes?
Oh, yes. Very good.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Armed.
Yeah.
It's the Count. Yes. Yes.
Hello, Mr. McDermott. I wanted to ask.
He looks like a young
What
Christopher
other
Lee,
acting
kind of.
methods did you use? Stanislavski, Uta Hagen, anything other than that to create the character in different films? You're like, no, I think this is more of an Uta moment, or I think I need to use Stanislavski to really bring out some of the more method aspects of the character.
Well, actually, none of those really. I mean, it's whatever you need to do as an actor, I think, and everybody needs to do different things at different times, and I have complete respect for that. But I do what I do beforehand. If research is necessary to find out, details about what planet I'm from or what I'm talking about today, I'll do all that. But then you just hope when you hear the word action, it'll come out. And because my voice is my voice, I mean, it's just, I just have it. I'm lucky. I didn't have to do a lot of vocal preparation either. But people who play villains regularly say this, and it's true. As well as being, horrible and nasty and twisted and all these kind of things, you have to, at the back of your mind, have a kind of charm, a kind of sinister charm, which works in the humor. Although he never thought he was funny, the Emperor. He had no sense of humor about himself. That's a long answer to your question, but it's just, I suppose you hear the word action, you've already taken your deep breath, and you just do it, and you hope it's going to work this time. And of course, if it doesn't, you can do it again.
Thank you. What was your name? I'm sorry.
Oh, Richard. Sorry.
Richard, thank you. And I am so sorry I called you Bail Organa.
That's okay.
Count Dooku.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, over here. Tell us your name and your question.
Yes, hi Ian. My name is James.
Hello, James.
And I just want to say that when I was a kid, he used to scare me really bad.
Oh, good.
But my question is,
Mission accomplished.
might we see you grace our screens anytime soon for the Kenobi show?
Oh, geez. They're really taking a big swing here. Not for an exclusive.
That is a disgraceful question.
I had to.
And one which I have no intention of answering. But you see, you can't win, can you? I will say this: you will remember the very first Star Wars film, subsequently christened A New Hope. The Emperor was present, or his presence was felt, but he never appeared. He was sort of interpreted by Moff, by the great Peter Cushing. And then more recently, in Rogue One, his presence was felt, but he never appeared. So all I would say about future speculation is, if you're expecting the Emperor to appear soon in flesh and blood, don't get your hopes up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking it, I don't think.
Well, I mean, that's an answer. That's an answer,
That is
folks.
something I didn't. Yeah, you have probably scared many of us in this room.
Oh, good.
Absolutely.
Palpatine.
You too? Yeah.
I mean, he also could
Some
just
people
be
had
fucking
me on
lying.
their duvet.
There's always that.
Maybe I should rephrase that. That's really scary, don't you think?
You and the Burgundy, please. What's your name and your question?
Hi, Ian. I'm Dean Storm. Thanks for coming out. I wanted to ask if you had fun with Sam Jackson, or if you had any fun stories.
Any fun stories with Sam Jackson?
Well, I suppose the fun one was really, when I hit him, and then I got my own back. When we worked together, he's totally charming. I haven't seen him for ages, sadly. I remember celebrating with him the opening of Revenge of the Sith on the steps, the red carpet at Cannes. And for a moment, I almost felt like Adolf Hitler, never mind the Emperor of the Universe, because there's just this red everywhere, and then there's all these people down there, roughly where you are, and a battery of photographers, more photographers than you've ever seen in your life, all moving backwards as you move forward to get the best shot. Some of them falling over each other. They didn't stop shooting, kept on pressing their camera buttons. And Sam Jackson said, "This is why I do it."
I know I did feel guilty today. Oh, thank you so much for your question. That I wore my Mace Windu, kyber crystal lightsaber necklace, and I was like, of all the ones to choose,
right.
I picked the one that that tried to kill you, and I'm so sorry.
Oh no, I wouldn't expect anything less.
Hi, I almost said with the lightsaber, but that applies to so many people in this room.
Pretty much.
Yeah, they are.
What's your name and your question?
Hi, Mr. McDermott. My name's Blake, and thank you, like everybody else, for showing up and doing all this. This is pretty cool.
Pleasure to be here.
Oh man, I know I said it earlier, but they are really
us as little kids.
Yeah,
you were
good.
truly a force, which was awesome.
having fun with the
And
mask.
as you talk about all the
That's all
time
I'm
is that
say.
you really did develop the Emperor. So, as the McDermott Emperor, what do you think his true final goal was? Even if you got Vader in the suit and you had the galaxy by the throat, what do you think his final goal would have been?
He just wanted to run everything. He just wanted, that was the thing that satisfied him more than he just wanted, the phrase is, absolute power. And he could never get enough of it. You find that, if you look around certain quarters of the world, it's never enough for certain people. He was the ultimate authoritarian. He didn't do money. He didn't spend too much on clothes, as you probably know. Although, when he became emperor again for the second time, he obviously went to a tailor and got a red piece underneath, which is, quite attractive for a short time. But I don't know. I think he had only one aim from which he never deviated, which was to become the most powerful person ever, so that he could subjugate every conceivable human and other creature to his will. There you go. And there are still people like that around,
All right, thank you for your question.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Hi, yes, you in the blue shirt. What is your name and your question?
My name is Joseph, and my question for the Emperor, and thank you for playing the Emperor. He's my favorite character, so being here is really surreal.
Oh, good.
So my question is, I read online that apparently you read the Darth Plagueis novel years ago, and if you did read that novel, did any of that old backstory, which some of it did get reworked into canon, come into your train of thought when dealing with Daisy Ridley?
That's a cool question.
I didn't. They're terrific books. I've looked into them and so on, but I haven't read one in full, but in terms of not wanting it to influence the character. Although I think quite a number of things that have been written about the characters that are not of George's gestation or JJ's or any of the other writers involved have come from the ideas that these original authors had. But I wanted just to have the material that I knew, and of course I thought about it a bit, but I didn't want to incorporate things that haven't really been incorporated into the movies. I should probably add yet to that, because all sorts of things may happen. No, I'm not hinting in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, what's your name and your question?
Hi, my name is Braden. Thank you for being here, Emperor. I just wanted to ask if you could go back and play any other character in the Star Wars universe, if you had the chance, who would it be?
Yeah. So difficult, isn't it? When you're Mr. Evil, you should probably, search out Mr. Good. But I wouldn't do that. I'll tell you my favorite character. And I can't remember the name of it. You will know from the last film. That little creature who gave Anthony Daniels his life back. Thank you. Yes. And
Emperor Palpatine is a Babu Frick stan, confirmed.
Were absolutely sensational. And also the voice belongs to a Scottish actress who I know quite well. So I'd be sentimental and want to take that part away from her.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Over here in the black hoodie, what's your name and your question?
It's funny because we share the same name, my lord.
Do we?
Yes.
Which one?
My name's Ian.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Okay.
I want to say a few things. You've, like everyone else, for me, like everyone else, you're a childhood terror for all of us. But for me, you've grown to my favorite villain of all cinema.
I just love the whole.
It's an honor being here with you, especially as like an early birthday gift. Because my birthday's next Thursday, so.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
So getting to the question.
Happy birthday,
to
Ian.
test your memory, what is your favorite piece of cut dialogue for Palpatine?
Palpatine, favorite piece of dialogue for Palpatine. That's testing. Well, we've already had Do It, haven't we? Which was which happened quite by accident. That's another story, really. Currently, when he's the chancellor, I think, yes, he's no longer the senator, and he says, "I love democracy." That and a series of a number of challenging alternatives is probably the best example of hypocrisy you're ever likely to hear.
Yeah, that's an interesting
Thanks
choice
so
for
much.
him.
Thank
That's
you.
an interesting
Do
choice.
Do you know, I heard that question as first as what Palpatine's favorite dessert was. I don't know. I think maybe just because I'm hungry. But now I'm curious
Good.
what his favorite dessert. Do you think he eats desserts?
You were the Emperor? No, he eats Ewoks.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh,
Good
so
God,
much fur
dude.
to deal with, though. Hi, what is your name and your question?
Hello, my name is Kareem from Toronto. Thank you for breathing so much life into all of our childhoods. You mentioned Bubba Freak, the way he saved 3PO, so I got to give you a little hey, and thank you for that. It's an early childhood memory to be scared and thrilled by your performance, and they say that people only die when they're forgotten. So I'd like to know what elements of your performance in The Emperor of the Universe you'd like to see carry on as the Emperors,
What
or
the
perhaps in the
fuck?
legacy characters like Snoke.
That's a pretty,
Yes, I don't know.
That's a bit of an aggressive question.
There are so many coming up, aren't there? You know, practitioners of evil, and it's very hard to sort of predict what you'd like to see. It's funny asking the most evil person in the universe, you know, how many more evil people he would like to encourage. But I think, I mean, as I said before, I think, you know, all actors, and we were speaking to a few others, villains, and there's some great villains around, not least, and I hope to meet him because I haven't, Giancarlo Esposito, who is a marvelous villain, not just now part of the Star Wars legacy, but of course in that great television series, Breaking Bad, and continuing into Better Call Saul, which I haven't seen the last episode, so keep your mouth shut. But the great thing about that part and about the way he creates it is he hardly says a word, but everything happens in that face, you know, in those eyes, in the intentions. And I think in some ways that's great acting. But and also the people who create the series, how it's written and so on. It's great to write, you know, a very, he's not wholly evil, well, probably he is actually, but, you know, a character like that, and not to give him lots of lines. I don't know how that evolved, but that in itself was brilliant, but particularly when you have a great actor who can do everything with his eyes. I know he's pretty good when he speaks as well, but we're back to silent movies again, what you can actually create, you know, minimally, even without speech.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to say, even when he plays Moff Gideon, just the way Giancarlo Esposito stands, his posture.
Yes, all
I'm
of
like,
it. There's the physical approach.
yeah,
Yes,
like, I'm
absolutely.
not going to mess with him. Hello, what is your name and what's your question?
Hi, I'm Mike Payne. My question is, you know, you played the Emperor in Return of the Jedi, and then years later you have to go back in time and play, you know, Senator Palpatine.
Yep.
Knowing that you were going to eventually work your way back into the Emperor.
Exactly.
How do you prepare for that as an actor? I felt like that was fascinating. I remember seeing The Phantom Menace the first time and going, wait, was that the same guy? It couldn't have been the same guy.
I know.
It was such a dramatic difference.
I think at the time I didn't know it was the same guy. I can't remember. No. To begin with, I didn't know I was Darth Sidious. I remember when George didn't tell me enough about it, you know, when he said, you know, do you know anyone who wants to be an emperor? These were his exact words. And when I sort of intimated it might be me, he then told me a little bit about that movie. And he said, well, it is how, you know, the rise of the monster. And he started off as a perfectly ordinary politician who is, well, about your age, which, you know, he was, early 50s, who looks a bit like you, which he did, apart from a little bit of extra hair that I had on. And so don't do much with it. Just sort of be, your average politician. He's not particularly nasty, not particularly good. He's pragmatic, you know what the job's like. So these were the sort of key motivational characteristics that I paid attention to, and I didn't know at the time of our meeting that I was going to be Darth Sidious. He talked about this guy who's working in the background. Here we go again, in a sort of dark world, and he's manipulating this, that, and the other. And I thought that sounds like a better part. And then on the first day, or practically on the first day, when I got the call sheet and I saw my name opposite Darth Sidious, I thought, they don't make that kind of mistake. So I worked out who it was. And George said, I've said this before, some of you probably heard, one day when we were filming, he said, you should think of your face, Ian's face, the senator's face, as Sidious's mask. So in a sense, your eyes, your real eyes, are his contact lenses. And that was enormously helpful. I mean, I didn't do anything as a result of it, but just thinking, that behind my own features and in my own eyes was a hidden presence. That was a help. Thank you.
Thank you. Over here, hi. I see you got the right shirt for this occasion. You're ready. What's your name and what's your question?
Howdy, Ian. My name's Chase. My question to you is kind of going back to your sword play. Obviously, the Emperor uses his hands as his, power, but when it came to his saber, what led you to picking the saber that you use with that, it's a very sleek design, one of the more shiny of all of them?
Yes. I knew it was going to be red, didn't I? And yes, and of course you see it in Return of the Jedi. I didn't pay much attention to it then. I thought, what's that doing there? But later on, everything relates, especially in those original movies, because George had it in his head. And, one day it was going to come out in the movies. Sam Jackson, who I think you probably know this, he intimated, I think, in a television show, a chat show, he'd love to be in Star Wars because he loved it. And so George got in touch with him. He said, "Are you serious? You're just talking." And
are you serious or are you just talking? Is a great quote.
And he got it. Purple saber. It was entirely because Sam said he'd do the movie if he got his own saber. So that's a tale. Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
I appreciate Samuel L. Jackson picking a purple lightsaber because that's my favorite color.
Yes, it's interesting because, here I go trying to commandeer everything, but purple is really an imperial color.
You are right.
I was in a hotel room recently, and most of it was purple, and I felt entirely at home.
Hi, over here in the Empire shirt. What's your name and what's your question?
Hey, Ian. My name is Nate. I'm from Nova Scotia.
Okay,
and
great.
I wanted to just let you know, you're part of one of my favorite Star Wars memories of sitting in the theater with my dad, watching Phantom Menace as a little kid, and he's nudging my shoulder, and he's just like, "You see that big guy? You see that guy up there? Yeah, he's the bad guy." And I'm like, "Shut up, Dad! You don't know anything." And it's been what started my Star Wars journey. So thank you so much for that.
Great.
I wanted to ask you, music is just as big a part of my life as Star Wars is. I wanted to ask you, what do you love to listen to, and what do you think the Emperor would love to rock out to?
Yes.
He's building the Spotify playlist.
I'm just saying, it's only because I heard it on my way here. I said to a friend of mine, "God, it's a great tune, isn't it?" Particularly when Stevie Wonder sings it. And yes.
Well, apparently there was a false alarm and evacuation at Celebration. Everyone's okay, but it sounds like there was a bit of a kerfuffle that resulted in an evac of the
Stevie Wonder. Yeah, great.
But everyone is okay, and I think that's probably why they kicked to this for the live stream.
And to bring it back to why we're all here, I like a lot of John Williams. I might describe as other music. Which is fine and complex and always passionate and always involving. So I suppose that would be the general answer to your question. If I can get involved in a piece of music, then I like it. And it's great when you have the radio on or someone suggests a piece to you, or you come across it on the internet, and it just suddenly has an effect on you. You don't quite know why. And then you want to follow it up and
hear more.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then over here, hi, what's your name and your question?
Hey, hi, my name is Luis, and I'm a really big fan, Ian. It's one of the biggest. And my question is, if you ever heard of the rumors of Disney creating like a Palpatine origin show with Tom Hiddleston, Loki from the Marvel, like playing as a younger self, do you think that's a good idea overall in general, making a limited series or a show
Man,
Palpatine
I
in his
get why
younger
people
days?
take these big swings with
I
questions,
think
but
it's a
you're
very
never
good rumor.
you're never going to get an answer out of them.
Yes, you know, I
You're
mean,
never
you
going to
could
get an answer out of them.
You can do that with practically any of the characters to whom it has not been done already. Yes, I think, you know, because we saw him rise when he was 50, didn't we? What did he go through to get there, and how did Sidious come about? I think all of that's very interesting, and no doubt there are people as we speak somewhere around this city thinking along those lines, and it would be great. But anyone younger than 78 is probably more suited to the part than me. And here comes the qualifying bit. Although, have you seen what they can do with faces? I'll better leave it at that. Thank you. Thanks for your question.
Hi, over here in the red shirt. What's your name and what's your question?
Hi there, my name's Chris. It's a pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty. As you know, next week it's the Queen's Jubilee, but it's actually your 40th Jubilee on the throne of the Empire. So I wondered if we could just get everyone to just celebrate that.
Okay.
Space fascism.
My question would be, out of everyone that you had the pleasure of working with on Return of the Jedi, or any of the films, who do you think was, you know, the one that was your favorite person to work with and made good friends with?
Yeah, I always go straight to this answer, which is Hayden, obviously. You know, we had a...
That's a great answer. That doesn't surprise me. Again, I've heard him answer this question before.
We had a very good, working relationship when we made the movies. So he's number one, you know, but everybody, you know, Frank Oz, who wasn't around much, you know, although he was unexpectedly around in Phantom Menace because that was going to be the first movie in which Yoda would be digitally recreated. But it wasn't to the level George thought, you know, was right yet. And apparently it was incredibly expensive. So Frank, who is also incredibly expensive, by the way, just in case you're listening, came back, and there he was behind the scene, manipulating this, you know, this small creature, and talking like he does, and that was one of the highlights of the whole movie for me. And he's a terrific guy, and I bumped into him recently at the premiere here of The Rise of Skywalker, and I didn't know at that time that Baby Yoda wasn't Baby Yoda. So I said, "What's it like going back in history?" He said, "I don't know what you're talking about." So, and now I know why he didn't really, but it was nice to think that he might have been Baby Yoda for a while there. And I don't think Lucasfilm were too unhappy that you thought that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to jump to you. And just a heads up, I think we have time for maybe 2 to 3 more questions. So, gentleman in the Black Spire Outpost, what is your name and question?
Well, hello there. My name is Casey. I just wanted to know, what was your all-time favorite scene to film?
Yes, that's an easy one too. It was the scene in the opera where he finally, nails Anakin, really. The course, the long mapped out course to the dark side is finally achieved. And originally that scene was not going to be in a theater. It was going to be another office scene. And George said, "I think we should get out of the office." So we got out of the office, and knowing that I like theater and so on, he said, "Well, why don't we try it in the theater?" And it was a brilliant idea, because if you're in a box in the opera, not
we
only
are
because
going
here we are in
to
exactly the same position.
Here, I'm going to bring
chairs, not
the
dissimilar,
other
actually,
clip home
when
here
we
because
did
we got
that
some more
scene.
stuff to
And
do.
so, of course,
So
talk
just hit
serious
you
actor
guys
to
real
him who was there,
quick with one
and
of
then I could pretend to
these.
watch the play. Move away from the